What if the solution to a huge national crisis wasn't about technology or a new law or some brilliant political strategy? What if it was just a shared set of values? Today, we're jumping into an amazing ancient story that looks at just that, a story about where real power, real prosperity truly comes from.
So let's really think about this for a second. Imagine a kingdom, a whole nation, just on the brink of falling apart. What would you pin your hopes on? Some kind of miracle? A secret weapon? Well, this story explores that exact question, and the answer is probably not what you'd expect.
So our journey doesn't actually start in the prosperous Kuru kingdom. Instead, we begin in the neighboring land of Kalinga, a place that is facing an absolute, total catastrophe.
Picture this. A deep, relentless drought has taken hold of the entire kingdom. The sun is just scorching the earth, the rivers have dried up, and the ground itself is just cracked and barren. There is absolutely no water to be found anywhere. And you know, it's a simple fact. Without water, there's no food. So a devastating famine just sweeps across the land. It turns lush fields into dust, and a single piece of bread becomes more valuable than gold.
The situation gets more and more desperate by the day. Widespread hunger leads to sickness, and sickness leads to death. The people of Kalinga are suffering terribly, and their king knows he has to do something drastic.
In their total desperation, they start looking for a magical fix. There's this rumor, you see, that the prosperous Kuru kingdom next door has a magnificent royal elephant named Anjana. And this wasn't just any elephant. People believed it had the power to summon rain. So this one animal becomes their single, desperate hope for survival.
And this is where we meet the hero of our story, King Dhananjaya of the Kuru kingdom. Now, he was a ruler who wasn't really known for his armies, but for his deep sense of virtue and his truly incredible generosity.
So when the 8 Brahmins from Kalinga show up and make their unbelievable request, the king's own advisors are just horrified. I mean, you can't blame them. Anjana was a symbol of their kingdom's power, a major asset in warfare. To them, giving it away was just, well, it was madness. But King Dhananjaya's perspective was on a completely different level. His reasoning is what's so fascinating here. He explains that giving things away, even incredibly valuable things, is part of his path toward achieving omniscience, which is the state of perfect, complete wisdom. To the king, that spiritual goal was worth way more than any worldly treasure. And just like that, without a second thought, he performs this unbelievable act of selfless generosity. In this simple, powerful gesture, he literally gives away his kingdom's greatest treasure, putting the magnificent elephant into the hands of the men from the suffering land of Kalinga. So the Brahmins head back to Kalinga, leading this legendary elephant. Can you just picture the scene? The entire kingdom is holding its breath, just watching and waiting for the miracle, waiting for the sky to finally open up and bring rain. And then, nothing. Absolutely nothing happened. The magical elephant, the one thing they had pinned all their hopes and dreams on, did not work. The drought continued, the famine raged on, their miracle cure was a complete and utter failure. You know, this failure forced the king of Kalinga to ask a much, much deeper question. If the prosperity of the Kuru kingdom didn't come from some magical animal, then where did it come from? He suddenly realized he'd been chasing the wrong thing all along. So he sends his messengers back to King Dhananjaya, but this time he didn't send them to ask for an object, he sent them to ask for an idea. The real secret behind the Kuru kingdom's success, its harmony, and its well-being.
And the answer they brought back was this: the Kuru Dhamma. It wasn't a magic spell. It wasn't a secret treasure map. It was simply a code of conduct, a set of shared ethical principles that everyone in the kingdom, from the very top to the very bottom, lived by every single day.
And right here, this is the real magic. These 5 principles, which you might recognize as the 5 precepts, they created a society that was built on kindness, on honesty, on integrity, and on clarity of mind. This was the true source of their peace and their prosperity. And get this, it wasn't just the king's personal pet project. The story tells us that 11 key people in the kingdom followed these principles perfectly, from the queen mother and the viceroy all the way down to the king's charioteer and even the city gatekeeper. It was a genuine collective commitment.
So what happened next is pretty incredible. The king of Kalinga had these principles written down on a golden plate, and he brought them back to his own people. And they adopted the Kuru Dhamma as their new way of life.
And as their whole society began to change from the inside out, the world around them seemed to respond. The rains finally came, and the kingdom began to heal and flourish once again.
I mean, what a story, right? It holds such a powerful and timeless lesson for all of us. It's really an encouragement to look for solutions not in some external fix, but in the way we choose to live and act together.
And the story doesn't even end there. There's this fascinating little epilogue where the text connects these characters to their future lives. It suggests that their virtuous actions here have these huge, profound consequences down the line, with King Dhananjaya himself later being reborn as the Buddha. It shows this deep, incredible link between what we do now and what happens later.
So, when you boil it all down, the story presents us with a really clear choice. We can spend our lives chasing after magical objects and external fixes for our problems, or we can focus on building a strong foundation of internal collective virtue, of just trying to do the right thing together.
Ultimately, the lesson that just rings through the ages from this story is this. The greatest resource any nation or any community really has is the character of its people. The power to create a better, more prosperous world is right here in our shared values and our collective actions.
Thanks so much for joining me for this one. And in the spirit of the Kuru Dhamma, which brought so much peace and prosperity in the story, I want to leave you with this simple, powerful wish. May you all be happy.